Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_Pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today I'm thrilled to be welcoming Susie deVille, a trailblazing entrepreneur, coach, and the author of Buoyant, the entrepreneur's guide to becoming wildly successful, creative, and free. Susie is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs rediscover their innate creativity and leverage it to build successful, joy-filled lives. Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Susie, why would somebody want to listen to today's conversation?
Well, if you are an entrepreneur or a visionary leader or someone who has a dream that's been sort of tugging at your sleeve for a while, and you are somehow overwhelmed, stuck, believing the cultural lore that you should be working more and resting and playing less, and you're looking for something completely unique from anything that you might have tried in the past to get you further along to the path that you really crave, which is to find the success and freedom that you have long wished for.
Very good. So, Susie, I want to start with the core idea of your book. You say that the prevailing advice that given to entrepreneurs is broken. Can you expand on what you mean by that and why that led you to write Buoyant?
Yeah, so we are taught from a very young age by very well-meaning parents and teachers that we need to roll up our sleeves and work, 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 and achieve. And that when we're stuck, we should really sort of double down on more work, have more discipline, and focus on productivity. And there's nothing wrong with hard work. I'm a big believer in hard work. But what has happened to us over the course of our lives is that we have replaced this beautiful opportunity to fill the well first with, oh, I'll just sleep when I'm dead kind of thing. And of course, that just renders us into this state of what I used to be, which was kind of a hollow husk of a human, very exhausted, very burned out, very overwhelmed. And I was in a constant state of trying to white knuckle my way through the world. And I was given the opportunity through what I refer to my nuclear winter period, an opportunity to reset not only my business and how I approached it, but my entire life. And while I wouldn't wish that kind of an experience on anyone because my entire life basically imploded. I had the loss of a home, a marriage, my health suffered, everything just kind of went poof. But because it was such a dramatic event, I was actually forced into doing things a new way. And initially, my response was, well, I'll just do what I've always done, which is just work harder. And of course, that did not work. Then I was faced with, okay, so what do I do? And so after I got myself through this period and on the other side, I decided that I would put all of these lessons into my book, Buoyant, to reach back and help anyone else who may be on the kind of emotional, financial, physical gurney that I was on.
Okay, so if being stuck doesn't mean to do more work and pull your sleeves up, and that's okay, just keep going. You'll be fine on the other side of who we could be or should be. What does it look like if we get stuck? If when those things happen, what do we do?
Well, the formula that I have is based upon not only my own experience, but also understanding the culture that we are immersed in, as well as our own brains and how they work. So let's talk a little bit about the human brain. And its job is to broadcast messages to us to keep us safe and to keep us alive. And that part of our brain, which is the earliest part of our brain, the limbic system, really was useful to us as early humans. But because we're wired for scarcity and survival, it doesn't really leave us much room for the other part of the equation if we're not mindful of our minds. So that's part one. We're kind of on the receiving end of the brain barking these messages to us, which basically amount to there's not enough and you're not enough. So that puts us into this place of imposter syndrome. Then, when we add the cultural messaging into it, which is work, 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 you have value when you achieve. We tend to believe, okay, if that's true, then maybe I don't have self worth if I'm not working, if I'm not achieving and doing. So both of these things kind of work together to put us on the slippery slope. And then we get into this very strange kind of loop of not only overdoing and sort of being steeped in burnout, but we reach for perfectionism. So, what I learned through my journey, as well as over 20 years of research now on innovation and creativity, was that if we were to shake things up by applying a very simple formula, which is number one, to inspire ourselves first, and then move into doing some very simple practices each day, we can then tap into our innate creativity, which ignites our ability to tap into our intuition, our ideation, our imagination, and our best problem solving skills.
Is there, okay, so I've heard that the creativity part of the mind is most active first part of the morning after you wake up from sleep because your brain is still kind of in the dream state. And so is there any truth to that? Have you found that to be true?
Well, I have something that will probably blow your mind. And that is, I discovered by accident this very phenomenon when I was writing my book. And what I was doing was feeding pages to my editor every single day. And then she would edit, and then I would get pages back. And I was working full time, still am working full time. And I thought, well, I'll just get up an hour earlier. I've always been an early bird, always getting up at 5 or so. But I thought, well, I'll get up at 4 and I'll use that extra hour to get my pages done. So I got up at 4 and I started to do my work, and I realized I had access to a very different kind of brain at 4 than I did at 5. And I thought, well, that's fascinating. And so then I thought, well, I'll just test it to see what happens when I get up at 3. Now, please, if you're listening, don't vote me off the island and don't believe that you have to get up this early. This is just what worked for me. And we'll talk later, I'm sure, during this conversation about how this can be applied to your own life in a very practical way. But when I got up at 3, I could touch something that truly was otherworldly in terms of my creativity. I almost could channel, and this is true for me still, my ability to tap into something ethereal, something that is deep within my subconscious mind, tapping into this very fertile sort of zone of ideas that have been sort of cooking in the background while I have slept. All of that comes rushing to the fore. And I think it has something to do with the fact that my traffic cop mind, what I call the clipboard Susie version of myself, which is the logistical, analytical, very practical part of me, hasn't really gotten going yet. And I can then leap over this very analytical, logical part of the self and hit something different, which is almost like purely coming from my soul. So I know that it worked for me. I have read lots of accounts from people who have had very similar situations and experiences. And I would just encourage anyone who's listening to just try, getting up with your journal and just trying to tap into that world because it is a very interesting yet very narrow window of time.
Yeah, and the best sense that I can get is your brain is in a different state when you're sleeping, when you're dreaming. And it's not bound by that clipboard version of yourself. You're not in the rigid kind of framework that you need to be in for the rest of the day. You're in kind of a loose and flowy type of mode. And so because of that, it's almost like the part of your brain that would say, that's not a good idea, cross that out. You end up writing that down anyways, and that happens more often than not. And when you can write or be in that creative state without that kind of editorial version of yourself cutting things off before they happen, then the magic starts to happen because you're not cutting off those ideas that could turn in. Now, it doesn't mean it always happens, but those creative ideas, if they're out on the page or out in the open space, then they can turn into something, or you can look at them and think, yeah, actually, that's not such a good idea. You can cross out and go the other direction. But if we don't allow those things out, if we edit those before they happen into reality, then they never happen and they just, nothing happens to them. So I think that is a very interesting insight. I also have found that to be true in the early mornings. The creativity flows much more freely than later on. And I think that best sense that I have is it has to do with the way that the state that your brain is in because of the dream state it was so close to where you were previously.
I would agree that it has something to do with the brain waves at that time of the day because you are just sort of waking up out of one zone, and you haven't fully entered the next zone. And but it's interesting to me because I have several clients who have said, I can't do that early morning creativity window that you keep pushing. I can't do it. I'm a night owl. What do I do? And so I talk to people about getting very clear about what I call your creative circadian rhythm. And of course, for me and for you, our peak is going to be in the morning. And my window of time is generally between 3 and about 10 a.m., where I can just write like the wind. I have access to problem solving. If I have a hard situation that I'm dealing with, or I need to bring the best of my courage and my clarity to something, it's going to happen during that window of time. But there are other people who come alive at 9 o'clock at night who do their best thinking, their best work between 9 and 2 a.m. And so I would encourage folks to try to play around with understanding first what you think the window is. Or you might have two. I have some folks who have a morning window that's maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then they have an evening one. But once you start with thinking about, okay, what is it that is true for me? Then test it. And then the trick is to protect it. Because one of the things that we tend to do, especially those of us who are early risers, is that we'll get up and we'll get the phone, we'll get into email, we'll start on social media, whatever it is, and we're wasting that precious window. So I advocate find your window, test it, and then dig a moat around it and try to protect it as best you can. Of course, life happens, business happens, and it's not a perfect science. But if we're mindful about protecting it, we tend to do a much better job, and then we tend to be able to pretty much coast along on the best version of our brains at the time of day when it best suits us.
Okay, so if we're trying to find that optimal creative circadian rhythm, what are the kind of things that we're looking for in order to establish when that time zone is best for us?
The one clue that I advocate that we start with is try to get a read on your barometer of willingness. Because if you can get a sense of how much courage do I have right now? What is my willingness to do the scary thing? What is my willingness to do the thing that I know is going to take me 10 minutes that I've been putting off for 3 months? That is just an icky task and no one else, unfortunately, other than I can do it. What does your barometer say in terms of your eagerness to kind of go into the dark forest and have a go? That tells us, okay, if that's high, that is very much a part of your window. When we're feeling the sort of relentless winds of procrastination and what Stephen Pressfield would call resistance, then that's not in our window. And those of us who have lofty dreams and have so many things that we want to experience and adventures we want to go on and ways we want to impact the world, we all have resistance of some kind. But when it's asleep or when we're stronger and more sort of acute with our creativity, then we have an opportunity to kind of leapfrog over that. So the first thing is, where's my willingness on the meter? And also, where is my sense of kind of being calm yet highly energized? It's this really interesting state internally where we are eager and passionate and full of energy, but we're not in that weird kind of frenetic, oh, I've got so much to do and I can't even think straight. We're not in that zone at all. We're in the opposite. It's a clear, um, buoyant sense of being that is also where we're most likely to take bold action.
Okay, so is there an opportunity? I guess it's a twofold question. Number one is there an opportunity to gamify this? So you look for those times and you play with seeing how far you can push that window forward a little bit or push that window backwards a little bit just to see what happens. And then the second part of that is, if I know this is my window, can I think through what the creativity system or process looks like for me, and then improve that creativity within that window, which would mean that that is a skill as opposed to some sort of innate ability that you're either born with or not.
Well, that is a perfect segue into the second part of the formula. So, the first part of the formula is this inspiration piece that we were just talking about. And then the other part of the formula is, okay, so what do we do if we want to gamify this and really max it out? And I have 5 practices that I have incorporated into my life. And these were things that I did during my nuclear winter period that I wasn't really conscious of. And it wasn't until I was writing my book where I was looking back, where I was like, what was it exactly that I did that got me out of this place? So I'll go through these 5 practices. I want to encourage people to jot these down and don't do the classic thing of trying to do all of these at once. The other thing that our brain will tell us to do is that we have to do these for, 30 to 40 minutes for it to count or for it to make any difference. That's also a brain construct that is not true. I can promise you, if you start with one of these 5 things for 5 minutes, you will start to see the ripple effect and impact into your entire day, how you think, how your business runs, and just how you respond to the sort of roller coaster ride of what it means to be an entrepreneur. So the first is Morning Pages, which is the brainchild of author Julia Cameron, who wrote the book The Artist's Way. And if you are not a journaler, please do not put your hands over your ears and go, la, 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 listening to you. I can tell you that every single client I have worked with who was journaling resistant and just sure that it was a bunch of hooey and or that it had to look a certain way or it had to be well written or well punctuated, all of those concerns we can put to the side. Julia advocates for 3 pages of longhand writing every morning. And this is an opportunity for really dumping the contents of your brain onto the page where we can get a separate state from the worrying part of the mind and then begin to access our souls. So we're getting all the mind junk out. These can be concerns, worries, things that have us by the tail, things that we're excited about, things that we're looking forward to, things we want to celebrate. If 3 pages is too much, start with 1. It does not have to be in a book. It does not have to be in a special book. It does not have to have gold, edges on the pages. It can literally be a scrap piece of paper, and you can tear it up if you want at the end and chuck it in the trash. The process of doing the writing is what the magic is where the magic actually happens. So if we can start to stop thinking about the end result in terms of a product when we're doing anything with regard to writing or creating something, and if we embrace actually the experience of it, that's the goal. So first one's Morning Pages. Second one, movement. All of us know the benefits of exercise and moving the body. I can tell you that taking a notebook with us, stick it in your pocket, putting a pencil in there or a pen, and not using the phone, but just going out for a walk, or you can ride a bicycle or do Pilates or yoga, or you can do chair exercises, whatever it is. When we are physically moving, not only are we releasing these wonderful neurotransmitters, but we're also getting in touch with this ability to access what I call the back of mind. This is where we start to leapfrog parts of intuition. So movement and having something to capture our ideas with is very important. And again, a 5-minute run or walk around the block can be great to start with. Invariably, what will happen is you'll start to want to add more time because it feels so good and it has such an immediate positive effect. But you don't have to start with a long period of time. The third is meditation. This is another loaded concept. People think I have to sit for an hour or I have to do some special thing or watch my breath or what's happening with my thoughts, and it's too complicated and I feel too antsy, and no thank you. If you start with 5 minutes in a dark room and you're just letting yourself be quiet and you're resisting the urge to get up, you're resisting the urge to look at your phone, you're just sitting, that's perfect. That's long enough to get a nice reset of the central nervous system. But it's also another nice way to sort of cross this threshold into this other part of who we are. The fourth is moments of inspired learning. And this, again, is just a very short practice. I love looking at and looking up inspirational quotes. I love listening to and reading poetry. I love to pull a book off the shelf and find a passage that I love. And again, 5 minutes is perfect. I have been keeping a diary from the beginning of this year, and I put an entry into each day that is an inspirational quote. And now that I'm almost at the end of this year with this practice, I have seen how these daily entries have impacted everything in my sort of fertile creative mind. Those quotes, which initially when I wrote them down, they're from artists, historians, philosophers, from entrepreneurs, musicians. When I have written them down initially, I didn't see the connections among them. But what happens is that when you close that book, your brain is still processing. And every day when you're flipping through and you're seeing these quotes, you're reminded, oh, the philosopher has a take on creativity that's very much sort of a corollary to what this musician said. And now I have a new idea. And it's this sort of brief immersion in the world of thought and of tapping into the sort of creative campfire of humanity that has a very calming and very nurturing result and puts us into a state of looking for more ways to connect what appear to be disparate dots. And the final one, which is the one that all my hard charging entrepreneurs fight me on, is making something. This is simply an opportunity to move these. Again, release the fascination with I've got to make something great or I've got to make something that everybody loves, but taking an opportunity to pull out a piece of paper or a journal. You can have crayons, pencils, colored markers, paints, or you can do collage. I have a very easy hack for people who want to do a fun collage, which I'll talk about in a second. And this is seemingly a big fat waste of time, according to our brain and according to our training. Making something sounds like something that retired people do. Making something sounds like something kids would do, or people who have time to kill, but not the hard charging, very busy entrepreneur. What are you talking about? And I have had clients just stare at me from across the table and say, you are out of your mind. So here's something easy that I want to give you a quick way to do a making something session that will set your soul on fire. For 1 week, start to collect things that stop you in your tracks. It can be an inspirational quote. It can be a swatch of color. It can be a word. It can be an image in a magazine. It can be something you see online. Start to collect these things and put them in an envelope. At the end of the week, take out a piece of paper, or if you are a journal person like me, get a journal and pull 1 to 3 things out of the envelope and make a very simple collage on the page. There are no rules about design or what it's supposed to look like. It's just you just immersing yourself in this envelope of goodies. These are all things that somehow sparked your attention. So you arrange it on the page, you glue it down, or you can use tape, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be beautiful, doesn't have to be perfect. And then study it and write a couple of sentences underneath it. What was it about these things that really captured your attention? What message or messages are there for you to see this now again? And is there a clue here about what brings me alive that I can actually use in a very utilitarian way? Most of my clients, when I ask them, what do you love? They look at me with this kind of combination of fear and panic because they have forgotten, because they've been so busy, they stopped doing the things that they love a long time ago. And it makes them feel completely lost and sad for about 2 seconds. And then I'm like, no, no, no. This is exactly what we're going to go on the adventure to discover, rediscover, and to remember. So all of these practices put together all have in common this ability for us to access the brain's default mode network, which is the birthplace, the center of our best creative thoughts and our best creative expression.
All right, so I got a couple of really really interesting takeaways from this. Number one, I really like that you call these practices and not habits. Uh, in my eyes, habit is a word that people misuse because they think of habits as set it and forget it, like set it and it just magically happens. But that's not necessarily how things work. If you want these things, if you want the benefit from doing these things, then you have to deliberately build a practice around these things and then show up to them, whatever that means, whatever the practice is, show up to it with the intent of mind of getting whatever it is on the other end. So setting it and forgetting it doesn't necessarily work for things like this because you want to not be on autopilot. You want to be in control and actually getting the benefit from doing these things. So I really like the practices. And we're going to circle back to journaling. I'm going to end with that one. But the quote idea, I really, really resonate with that one because for a long time, I would take a quote and I would write it down in the morning time. I would think about it all day. And at the end of the day, I would jot down a few words, a few sentences that expanded on that quote in such a way that meant something to me. So you're already doing this, but I would figure out how they connect in my mind and then put that down as well as a way to, if I wanted to, or when I go back to look at those, it's not like, oh, hey, I sort of, no, it's there's the quote and then there's my thinking on that quote so that I actually had to think about it and doing it in the beginning of the day. Then I had that background process that you were talking about going on throughout the day. And then when I sat down at the end of the day, either I had something to think about because I did it all day, or I just something came out because it was already back there and I wasn't thinking about it, but it happened, accidentally on purpose, sort of. Um, and journaling. I have been a journaler for a number of years, and years and years ago, I did a rough version of the bullet journal method, right? From
Mhm.
Ryder Carroll. No, that's not right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Ryder Carroll. Um, did his method for a long time. Then I jumped into a digital journaling kind of method, and I did that for a lot longer. In fact, probably 6 or so years. I have made the choice to shift away from digital into a pseudo digital, like writing down on my tablet, because I think that there is something to the physicality of writing something down, whether that's on a digital medium or a physical medium. I think that both of them will apply, but my practice of journaling in the digital sense didn't offer as many benefits as I was hoping it would. And I did it for a long time, and it was beautiful because it would be connected, and I could do weekly reviews and monthly reviews and quarterly reviews, and it would all pull the information, which was super. But it didn't necessarily have that meaning, that impact that I was hoping or looking for. So I guess my question to you is there, or have you found there to be something different between journaling and a digital medium versus a physical medium? And I think physical, it works if you're writing down on an iPad or an ink tablet or something like that. I think that both of those applies because you're still using your brain in the same type of way. But that versus a digital medium, what's your take on that? Hey everyone, it's Chris Bean here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show.
I love the analog versus digital conversation so much. As an analog queen, I would say I'm always going to advocate for paper and pencil or paper and a pen over anything digital, even your iPad,
Hmm.
writing on that. Um, You're definitely correct that the physical act of writing versus typing is very different and is felt and experienced very different in the body, and the brain is doing something very different when we're typing versus writing. Absolutely. But what you mentioned toward the end there about just, it was efficient and I could search it and I could pull all this information. This now we're in clipboard Susie land, right? That's not what we're actually after with the journaling practice. We're after what I call explorer Susie. We're after this person who's going to go into this world, the unknown, and physically connect with this paper and this pencil or this pen. And we're going to let ourselves go on this journey. And as we write and as we handle the journal or handle the paper, or we see the splotch of ink on the page, other things, there's an alchemy that's happening in the background that, in my opinion, cannot be duplicated by any stretch of the imagination with anything done in the digital world. So this sinking in is the point, in my opinion, of all creative acts. It's the point of journaling. It's the point of meditation. It's the point of making something. And again, if we can kind of release our white knuckle grip on everything has to be maxed out, everything has to have a certain coefficient of 3x versus 5 days ago, and all of this way of thinking. And I love self-improvement. I love looking for ways to do things in a faster, better way. But that's one part of us, and it gets a lot of airtime and it gets a lot of playing time. But let's bring the other part of us to the stage and give it free rein and dive in there in a way that is really sort of steeped more in curiosity and wonder versus, I got to make this make sense. When I was writing my book, I decided I had read all kinds of things, all kinds of wonderful writing advice from lots of very successful writers. And everyone has a process. And I kept thinking, I'm going to find the perfect process. I'm going to put all these processes together and see, this is the clipboard version of me. I'm going to outline, I'm going to make this thing look amazing, and it's going to be on this platform, and I'm going to have Scrivener in the mix. And there was no joy at all in Mudville for Nemo. None. Because I was so concerned about the wrong things, and it was filling me with anxiety, and there was nothing about it that felt like I was going to uncover something groundbreaking from within myself, or something that I would see in this connection of these disparate dots. So I chucked that plan and I decided, I'm going to use the Paris market metaphor for how I'm going to write this book. So if you go to a Paris open air market, you have your bag, you have your little, market bag, and you go around and you look around, what's fresh, what's colorful, what's in season, what do the people in the booths say is the thing that you absolutely have to have that day. And I have gone to Paris markets, and I have shown up with no idea whatsoever about what I'm going to ultimately cook. I'm just going to go on an exploration mission and just get all the goodies that I can find that really call to me. So I would take every single day, I would go on a mission to find cool things that I love, things that are interesting to me, things that make me go, wait, what? Things that make me have chills, things that I would read that would bring me to tears. All of that I started to collect. And instead of having a market bag and all kinds of ingredients, I had stuff written down on the most incredibly unorganized pieces of paper into a box. And then I would, after I had collected, I would go through the box and I would put everything out and I would start to look at what I had, just like you have ingredients in the kitchen. Okay, what can I do with celery root and scallops and cheese in a bag? So that's how I created this book. And it was so much fun to write because it was coming from and people can feel it when they read the book, they can feel that I'm not in this place of, I got to convince you of something. And rather, I'm inviting you to walk alongside me in this market with your own bag and to find what calls to you, what's colorful and exciting and fills you with joy, what brings you alive. Let's go on this journey together, side by side.
Okay, so that reminds me of Ryan Holiday's method for writing books, where he collects all these note cards and then organizes them, which I think is also similar to, I think it's called Zettelkasten, the note taking method.
Zettelkasten.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, right. So both of
Total
those kind
fan.
of they kind of link together. And I got to ask this because I see it back there. Is that a Royal Aristocrat? Did you write your book on that? The
I
typewriter?
did not. I
Oh,
love it though.
uh,
This thing is a tank. It was built, I think it's a 1957 model. And it's just types like a dream. And I love, but for long periods of time, I can't do it. I don't have, I mean, because you really have to go after it
hmm
to get the keys to move.
hmm
So, but it's really fun for short pieces. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I know. I think that there's something in the process that we use, the tools that we use to make these creative things. So that special notebook, while it is not necessary, I think that there's something in that because it brings that puts you in the right mindset. When you sit down at the typewriter, different things happen than what happens if you sit down at a keyboard as you're typing, on a screen. It's the physicality of that, but then also, with the typewriter specifically, is there's the physicality to it, but there's also like quite literally muscle that goes into pressing those
Yes.
keys in such a way that it types something. And if you make the mistake, it is there on the page. You have to take your little pencil out and nope, that's not what I wanted to say, and then retype it. Yeah. Anyways, I saw it back there, and we were talking about the physicality of the mediums that we use, and so I figured I would ask. Yeah.
Well, I do want to, if I may say something about Ryan Holiday, because I'm a huge fan, and his commonplace method that he was taught by Robert Greene, I think is very, very, very powerful. And I don't do, and Zettelkasten is a whole nother level of rabbit hole note taking if you want to go into that world. But if you're just starting out, here's the thing. When we look at the Ryan Holidays and the Zettelkasten gurus on YouTube, we can get so hung up on, am I doing this right? I feel like I'm not quite sure I have it yet. And we can watch 100 videos or we can try to do Ryan's method perfectly. Or am I getting the categories right or blah, blah, blah. So that's why it's important, I think, if we do start with a journal, just getting stuff into it and not worrying initially what the order is, how you're going to search it. Does it make sense? Like just getting it out there first, because the process of trying to search it and trying to make sense of it surfaces great stuff. And there has to be, just as you said, when we're pounding on this manual typewriter, trying to get the keys to hit the page, that level of physicality is important, just like writing is important. And also this time that we spend with this pile of notes, trying to find the connecting threads, trying to figure out what it is that we truly want to say, that sweat in that sort of milieu of hodgepodge is vital. And we want to try to skip over all of that and think, oh, there's got to be an easier way. Well, there are easier ways, but as you found with your journaling, we're losing the subtlety and the sublime nature of the creative expression. And it's the difference between a French sauce that's been cooking for 7 hours, and something that we just opened the jar, and dumped onto the pasta.
Well, okay, so that brings us into the next part. Speaking of things being uncomfortable or uncertain, entrepreneurship is full of those instances all the time. And you emphasize the importance of tolerating this uncertainty. So I guess my question is, why is this crucial that somebody steps into this arena where this uncertainty can happen, and how does that help them to build courage, and what do they do thereafter?
So let's begin with what the entrepreneur's sort of daily existence is. It is really like one uncertain moment after another. Even if we've done something a million times, there's parts of us that are looking to do it a new way. Or we're bringing something new on board and it has technology aspects that we don't fully understand, or we may need to create new systems for things because the business has scaled to a certain point, and we're resistant to doing that because A, we're not a systems person, and B, it requires a different kind of a brain and a level of courage, and we're just like, no, I think I'll just keep doing everything myself, doing invoices at 10 p.m., and that'll save me from having to do these systems. Well, if we have a willingness to cross the threshold into uncertainty and stay there for 5 minutes, we're kind of looking around like treading water in the deep end of the pool going, oh, this isn't so bad. This isn't nearly as horrible as I thought it would be. But it's that point between actually deciding and then taking that first step to doing it, which is where all of the walls are, where all of the fear resides. And we will literally sometimes do anything to avoid having a moment with that wall. And what happens to us is that we start to believe, I don't have what it takes. Remember going back to the brain, you're not enough and there's not enough. That kind of resistance to going across the wall into the unknown surreptitiously tells our brain that it's right, that I don't have really what it takes. But here's the great news. When we do the 5 M's, what happens is that we build the musculature for courage to go across the wall. And initially, you will do morning pages for several weeks, and you'll start to feel like there's a new energetic sheriff in town. Your day will start to work differently. Time will expand like an accordion, even though obviously you're not getting any more of it. It will feel like it is changing. Your experience of it changes. You don't have this almost frenetic desire to be in motion all the time, to outrun your brain, to outrun your thinking, to avoid feeling, to finally stop and take a moment and not be distracted, and to hear yourself think. So these practices, each time we have an at-bat, we create a new neural pathway that is much more in favor of building this courage musculature. And at the same time, when we stop doing the old behaviors, which is to avoid and to sort of shrink away from challenges or resistance, we prune the old neural pathways. So we're doing two things at the same time. And all of this builds this delicious new self trust, which helps us in absolutely every aspect of our lives. Because if you think about the biggest things you've ever done, the scariest moments where you chose to go into the 100-acre wood that's dark and you can't see and it's full of briars. Every single time that we choose to do, we say yes to that and we take one step in there, then we're actually signaling to ourselves, and here comes the big woo woo, we're also signaling to the universe that we have the willingness to do the dance with uncertainty. And so not only are we getting more courage, here comes more intuition. And when those start to dance together, serendipity is ignited. And this is when weird things start to happen. Someone introduces you to someone who is the perfect person that you have, the perfect kind of resource for you. Or a deal just falls in your lap out of nowhere. Or you wake up and you have the best idea that you've had in 5 years. And you know exactly what you want to do with it, and you just start. You don't ruminate and wring your hands and wonder if it's going to be any good, because that's the old version of you. The new version of you is just willing to give it a go. It's not concerned about what the outcome is. It's just going to get in there and see what happens.
All right, really interesting. So my kind of interpretation of that is, if we don't step into the unknown, we stay inside of our comfort zone. And if we stay inside of our comfort zone, I listeners have heard this a number of times, but I like to think of the comfort zone as your warm bed on a cold morning. The alarm goes off. Now I'm going to snooze. I'm going to snooze. I'm going to snooze. And you stay in that comfort, or the comfort of the warm bed. You don't actually want to get up and get out and do things. However, if you only stay in your bed all day, every day, you don't get anything done. And that quickly becomes a prison as opposed to otherwise. So we have to step foot into the unknown, embrace that uncertainty if we want to learn and grow and be something different and better than otherwise. And I think that stems from, like, being able to be in that unknown means that we have a willingness to look for and go after adventure. Right? You think about, like, some of the oldest stories that we have. You have the warrior prince going up to fight the knight, or going up to fight the dragon and slaying the dragon. Then he gets the princess in return, right? But in order to do that, he has to fight what everybody else was fearful of. He has to be the one to go through and fight that dragon, the literal fire-breathing dragon. What does he get for the other side? He gets the benefit, the reward, the gold, the princess, whatever it is. But if we cannot bring ourselves to fight that dragon, whatever the small dragon it is that's in front of you right now, then we can't get that thing that's on the other side. And oftentimes we don't know what's on the other side. Sometimes we fight 10 or 15 dragons before anything actually happens, because we have to kind of lay the groundwork both in reality but also in ourselves, so that we start to see ourselves as the person who will take on the dragon, who will willingly confront the dragon, to have the wherewithal to be on the other side, because who knows what's on the other side. But if we don't face that dragon, if we don't fight that dragon, if we don't see the potential that's on the other side, then we wither away. We stay in that bed on that warm, comfortable blankets, and we never actually achieve anything. And I think that oftentimes people forget that. And goal setting, the quote unquote standard goal setting method, I think hurts people in that regard. Because SMART, one of those is achievable, right? And if it's achievable, sometimes that means that you're not pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Now, I don't mean achievable in such a way that I want to fly tomorrow. Okay, well, besides getting on a plane, I'm probably not going to, grow wings and flap away and fly. But if I'm not stretching myself to grow I think that the hard part is, as a cultural influence, we have this opportunity to think about goals as something that's already achievable, something that's already in my grasp. I can just go and grab it right now. See, I got it. I got my goal. But without that willingness to confront the unknown, the adventure that waits on the other side, we never actually grow past that comfort zone. We can't be in that uncertainty and live in that or be in that for any length of time. So I think that encouraging people to do that is so helpful in so many different ways. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, well, you're so welcome. I want to point out because I love the dragon metaphor. Joseph Campbell would say the dragon, of course, is us. The dragon in the cave that we are going in there to battle with is a part of us, is us, and it's the part of us that's unwilling to cross that threshold into the unknown.
Well, and that goes
And
to is that Nietzsche, the shadow work, right? The
yes,
embrace your shadow. So because that's
yes,
where you don't want to look, but
yes,
you need to embrace those things in order to become
yes.
that full person.
Um, I want to share just a really quick story of something that just happened to me very recently because it is such a great illustration of what you have just been talking about. I went to an art retreat and I was there for a total of 10 days. And over the course of, I think it was 7 days, we did art from about 8 o'clock in the morning. And we had breaks, of course, but I was doing art 8 to 10 hours a day. And I was doing a lot of a combination of acrylics in an abstract form. And there were, I don't know, 40, 50 people who were a part of this retreat. And and I'm a very gregarious, I love to talk to people. But when I got in there and I was with my boards and my paints and everything, I just wanted to go into the zone. I knew I had this very rare opportunity to really go into the unknown for a long periods of time. And I was really curious what was going to happen. And I didn't want to be distracted and chatting and so forth. So I just went into my own little world. And there were, at the end of maybe 8 hours or so the first day, something was changing in my work because I was not only going across this wall and into the unknown or in the cave with myself, my fellow dragon self. I was in there for so long and I was tuning out everybody else that my soul and my subconscious mind came roaring to the fore. And I started making images and designs that I now understand, but certainly in the moment didn't understand. And I hit this place where, like on the beginning of day 3, where my work just changed. And it was like I had cracked through something. And I talk with people about the parable of the Golden Buddha, which I won't go into the whole parable, but over our lifetime, we accumulate all of this stuff that is comprised of other people's expectations, our own expectations, what culture is telling us, what the brain is telling us. And it's like all of this concrete on the golden Buddha of who we truly are. And our job is to go on this archaeological dig of the self to chip all that away, to reveal who we truly are. It's not that we have to become somebody else. We just have to get rid of the stuff that's not us. So in this retreat, and I sort of cracked through this concrete and this new work emerged. But here's what also happened. I started to get ideas like a river for book number 2. I started to get ideas about programs that I want to create. I started to get ideas about something, inspiration for a building that I want to create on the main street in my hometown. And I had to just keep paper and pencil next to me because it was just coming out. It was just almost like a tsunami of ideas. But I'm convinced that in addition to the practice of going across the threshold for such a sustained period of time, not only did it change and create this breakthrough in my work in terms of my art, but the art of me had a breakthrough too.
Yeah, I think it's something strange happens when you embrace the uncertainty and the unknown, and you do it willingly. You do it on purpose with intent and purpose. And if we can structure something into our day where we embrace that uncertainty, we do something that is uncomfortable every day. I talk about oftentimes taking a cold shower, and sometimes people really are really adverse to that. They don't like that at all. So something easy I've talked about recently is you can hold your breath. Challenge yourself to see how long you can hold your breath, because holding your breath is really is really not comfortable to do for stretches of time. But you're looking at the time, you're getting feedback, and you're the only person that's making you do that is yourself. And so you're sitting in that sort of uncomfortableness of forcing yourself to not breathe with the desired result of pushing that time span. But the benefit that you have on the back end is you're going through that uncomfortableness, that uncertainty of what's going to be on the other end of this. And there's all sorts of benefits that happen from that, just from holding your breath, but there's all sorts of other benefits, internal benefits that happen by going and facing that uncertainty. So, if cold showers are not your thing, do your best to structure something in your day that you are purposefully attempting to do something that is uncertain, attempting to do something that is uncomfortable for you to do. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's holding your breath, whatever it is. Do something to challenge yourself each and every day, with the effort to grow on the other end. And Susie,
I
oh, go
Yeah,
ahead. Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the 5 M's are a gentle way into this
Mm,
way of challenging yourself and building the musculature for more tolerance in the world of uncertainty. And making something in particular tends to bring out all the dragons,
mm.
because our childhood was, you're not an artist. And we tend to believe that. For the majority of us, used to still believe that. So if you take your journal or the piece of paper and the crayons, or make a collage, or I have a zillion different kinds of really fun, quick exercises in my book, which will put you in this zone that doesn't feel like you have to do it perfectly, that you will actually enjoy it. And it is stretching you, and it's a very doable way to get started. If And I love a cold shower, I do it every morning. But if that's not your thing, this is a very easy way to kind of onboard into that world.
Well, Susie, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the inspiring conversation and sharing your insights and empowering our listeners to embrace their creativity and, of course, accept that uncertainty of what is in front of them. And before we wrap up, do you have any key thoughts or takeaways you'd like to share with the listeners?
I would love for folks to stop paying attention to managing their time and instead make a New Year's resolution to manage your energy. And we have talked a lot about the power of intention throughout this conversation. And if you can intentionally start to pay attention to what is draining your energy versus what is filling your energy, what is bringing you alive, that can be the most incredible spark for some delicious changes in the new year.
And if the listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to go about that?
I'd love for folks to go to my website, which is innovationandcreativityinstitute.com. And there you can download a free toolkit as well as connect with me on all the social channels.
Very good. And listeners, make sure you grab a copy of Susie's book, Buoyant, and explore her work at the Innovation and Creativity Institute. Let us know what resonated with you from today's episode. And as always, stay prestigious.